So, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Bullets Gotti. You already know what it is. You already know what it is. You already know what it is. This video today, we're going to talk about Harlem versus Jay-Z. So, I did a post on Instagram, that was really based on the whole Harlem thing. And I really had to dial back and really look at Jay's career. And I said to myself, yo, Jay really copied the Harlem swag and try to make it seem like he had a Brooklyn swag or whatever he wanted to do, right? And the way people said he set trends and he was a trendsetter and he was this and that, right? And let's keep it real, right? Back in the days, I always say, everybody said who made the Yankee hat fashionable. Now, the Yankee hat, that was a thing that a lot of block dudes wore, the Yankee hats, especially a lot of dudes uptown. That was like a formidable outfit uptown was the Yankee hat. A lot of rappers, I don't care if it was Biggie, Nas, before Jay, Rakim, you name it, they had a Yankee hat on. So I can't say he made the Yankee hat fashionable. But I always say that, Jay was a swagger jacker, Like, one thing I respect about Nelly gave a lot of his credit to, because he was out there in Philly. So he gave a lot of credit to the Philly dudes for putting them on to the Jersey thing. Because they was the ones that was really wearing the Mitchell and Ness, the Philly dudes. Like Ram Squad, Major Figures. They was up on that, right? Out there in Philly. And then you got the dudes in Harlem that put Nelly on to the custom-made Gucci and Louis Vuitton. And, you know what I'm saying? You can see Nelly wearing the custom-made Gucci, custom-made Louis Vuitton jerseys and outfits. You know what I'm saying? He got that swag from Harlem. You know what I'm saying? He always credit where his swag come from. He always credited, give everything, show love to trail, show love to, and that's why, if you watch the EI video, you see, Trail in there, Mino, Huddy. I think Blinky Blink is in that video. Sugar J. I think that was Sugar J crib, if I'm not mistaken, in Jersey. Cuda. He always give the credit back to all the Harlem World dudes. That was around him, because he was around Huddy and all of them. He was around Cardin and all of them. But when it come to Jay never gave credit to the dudes that put him up on game, because it was the Harlem dudes that put him up on the Chris style. It was the Harlem dudes that put him up on the Iceberg. Harlem dudes put him up on the Goyer and the Cartier lenses and all that. You know what I'm saying? The Harlem dudes put him up on, the Ace Solo boots and all that stuff that you saw Jay was rocking, bro. He was getting all that swagger from Harlem cats. And then when you started seeing him with the one leg joint, that was, because LL tell you where he get a lot of his swag from, and a lot of the trends. He said he tells everybody this from the session I hung with Alpo, Rich Porter, my man Big Chuck, Black Just. So he got all his swag from being around Poe and being around Rich, and his me, Big Chuck and Black Just. So he getting all this, he's souping up all this game, and he give these dudes their credit, right? AZ and all of them, right? But when it came to Jay, he never really gave them dudes their credit for really giving them, the swag, because a lot of people really believe, and this is the thing, even with the Rich Porter thing, right? When back in the days when dudes was getting on about RP, they was like, yo, when I heard Mino talked about that was a lot of people felt. When the diss track came out, to Do It Again freestyle diss that he did on Jay, everybody uptown felt that he was copying Rich Porter. Just the way he was, you know, in front of the car with the one leg up, you know what I'm saying? The white on white kicks. You know, that was a Rich Porter look. You know, with the one slim chain, you know, that was the crucifix joint, that was a Rich Porter look. You know? And then not only that he had a Rich Porter look, but he also was copying Poe. Like if you watch his episode on Diary, right? MTV Diary, right? If you watch that episode that he did, just watch it when he driving around like Brooklyn and he in the whip low, like this how Poe used to drive. Poe and them used to drive like this, but Poe was the dude that always drive low. You know what I'm saying? So he in the whip all low and shit like Poe used to be. You know, that's how you know, like, Jay wanted to be a Harlem dude, but he never wanted to give them Harlem dudes they dudes. He never wanted to show the gratitude that he really loved the Harlem dudes swagger, and he really wanted to be uptown. Because everything he did, I don't care if it was the swag, I don't care if it was the dress, I don't care if it was the way of driving, he wanted to be a Harlem dude. You know, in the early, I would say before Beans and them really came, before he got all of the Philly dudes, because then I always say like around like 2000, 2001, he wanted to be a Philly dude. You started hearing him spitting the Philly slang, you know what I'm saying? You know, dressing like how the Philly dudes was dressing with the jerseys and all that. You know what I mean? The way they was wearing their fitteds. So he really wanted to be like a Philly dude. You know, when he got around Beans and Freeway and Petey Crack, you know, taking their flows and their slangs, right? But in the beginning, and anybody could watch that MTV Diary, and then you could look at a picture of Poe where he's sitting low in the whip. That's how Poe used to do. Sitting low, driving the whip. Anybody from Harlem from that era will tell you, Poe used to sit low down in the whip the way Jay-Z was driving that car. So he always wanted to emulate Harlem. He never emulated the rugged Brooklyn look. He emulated the Harlem get money thing. You understand what I'm saying? And like, that's why when a lot of people talk about, like, when I look at like Rockefeller, right? And you just look at like the whole thing, like Rockefeller, to be honest, embodied bad boy. I don't care what nobody say. They embodied, it wasn't until they got Beans in them, they carved their own, you know, Beans, Cam, and Kanye, they carved their own legacy. But in the beginning of that whole Rockefeller movement, this is facts. They copied the bad boy blueprint. They copied the bad boy blueprint and formula straight up and down. If you look at Rockefeller and you look at Rockefeller when he first, they copied. You just look at the Sunshine video. You look at the joint, the Reasonable Doubt joint. You just look at it. They was copying Bad Boy. Dame dancing in the video. And I love Dame. Dame called his own legacy. Even though Dame comes from that element that Puff come from. Dame best out. Puff, same game. So they running in the same similar circle. Party promoter, same thing. You know what I'm saying? Came in the game doing that. But they copied the blueprint and the formula of Bad Boy. Right? The thing is, Bad Boy was more uptown, and had more of an uptown appeal. You know what I'm saying? And when dudes really look at like the legacy of Bad Boy, you know, Rockefeller, You know what I'm saying? You could see that they copied the swag. You know? You can see they copy. You know? So they copied the bad boy formula. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, don't get me wrong. You know, Rockefeller had a great little run, but to say it had a run like how a Rough Riders, because Rough Riders had they own. That's why I always say Rough Riders had the streets and Bad Boy had the streets for a reason, especially like Uptown, because Rough Riders appeal. That bike life community was huge. Uptown Harlem, the Bronx, they was heavy with the bike life. You know, Rough Riders had an appeal for dudes that like to ride, hustling niggas that like to ride bikes. That was the appeal of Rough Riders. It was the appeal for hustling dudes that like to ride motorcycles, that like to ride dirt bikes, ATVs, you know what I'm saying, coming through. That was the Rough Riders appeal. You know what I'm saying? They was street. They was straight street, straight raw. You know, but they was still uptown. You know what I'm saying? They was for the dudes in the Bronx, dudes Mount Vernon, Yonkers, and Harlem, right? And then you got, you know, Bad Boy that was uptown, Harlem, Bronx, the uptown appeal. They had that, you know what I'm saying? And they was for the get money hustling dudes that get fly, pop bottles, go to the club. That was Bad Boy, right? Now Rockefeller was an in between. They didn't have their niche. You know what I'm saying? Because 1 minute they wanted to be the hustler and the gangster. And then, like I said, when Jay got to volume 2, you know what I'm saying? Because really, volume one, Reasonable Doubt, he was trying to carve an image, right? By like volume 2, he came up with this whole, like, he was trying to embody Rich Porter. You know what I'm saying? And that was what a lot of dudes uptown did not like, that he really was trying to copy the Rich Porter look. Now, don't get me wrong. Jay was uptown. You know what I'm saying? He was copying. And a lot of people keep saying he was copying from Warren, right? Jay used to cop from Spivey. You know, anybody that know uptown, they know who Spivey is. That's who Jay-Z used to cop from, Spivey, right? Everybody say, yo, Jay-Z put the money, got the brick. He had 92 bricks or whatever the story they like to say. And he put that money behind Rockefeller. Not true at all. It was people like Biggs Burke, Juan, Tone. Allegedly, a lot of people on the street said some of Alpo's money was involved in Rockefeller being built, right? You know, Biggs, Babalab, you know, and Malik Sealy. A lot of these people put their money behind Rockefeller Records, right? Just like Malik Sealy, Juan, shout out to Twan from Feds Magazine, who was, I would say, instrumental in Baseline Studios being built. A lot of people don't know that. You understand what I'm saying? So when people go with these stories, I get it. They love the stories. But that's just the story. They not going to tell you the real, true story of how Rockefeller came and really became what it became. Because everybody want to believe the mythological story that, oh, Rockefeller, these dudes, Jay had the money and all that. Jay, come on, bro. We going to be honest. Jay had money, but Jay didn't have the money that people trying to make it seem like he had, right? A lot of that story was really the Bad Boy story. You know what I'm saying? People just don't, they own a blemish and want to say, oh, Puff got it. No. Like, a lot of people know the Bad Boy story is really the real story. It's not the Rockefeller story. Yes, street dudes did put their money behind Rockefeller, but Jaden had a bag to put it, to help it get off the ground. It was the dudes that was affiliated with the situation that came in there because they didn't really rock with Jay. You got to remember, dudes really didn't rock with Jay. They didn't really rock with Jay. It wasn't until he started rapping that street shit, that's when they really, because when he first, if you remember, Jay rapped like the Fooshnickers. Jay was the speed rap, you know what I'm saying? The same how Twista and all these dudes was rapping. He was a speed rapper. He wasn't talking about no block shit. He was just rapping, right? It wasn't until he had the battle against X, the battle against Big L, that you start hearing him talking that street shit, and then that's when dudes really respect him. Because Biggs and them really wasn't feeling him. Babala wasn't really feeling him. A lot of dudes wasn't really feeling him. You could ask Big Face, ask all of them. They'll tell you they wasn't feeling him. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them dudes, shout out to Big Face, shout out to the whole CB, shout out to all of them. They know. They'll tell you the real story that before Jay got signed, before Jay, broke off with that first album, Son did not have a signature style that the streets was really jacking. They really wasn't jacking. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until he started talking about the OT trips and talking about, all that talk he was talking about and Can I Live? You know what I'm saying? But the music wasn't sounding like that originally. The music wasn't sounding like how it started to sound when he did, the first album. You know what I'm saying? Everybody know that. It wasn't sounding like that originally. But years later went by, like I said, he had the beef with Mace. You know what I'm saying? Everybody know. Him and Mace went at it like around like 9-7. Yeah, 9-7. Him and Mace went at it. Right? Mace and him go at it. You know what I'm saying? Mace was that dude. He was hating on Mace. You know what I'm saying? Him and Nas went at it because he was mad that Nas and AZ didn't do the Bring It On. Because originally, Bring It On was Nas and AZ. And it wasn't going to be Source Money and Jazz-O. But Nas and AZ didn't come to the studio. So he ended up putting Jazz-O and Source Money, right? So mind you, right? This is what people got to understand. Mace that dude. Mace is smoking Jay. Out the gate, he's smoking Jay. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you look at a dude that was setting trends, Mace was the nigga setting trends. Like, we talking about 9-7, 9-8, 9. This nigga setting trends. Right? Now, Son wasn't really setting no trends. And that's why I had an argument today about Jay-Z. And, like, niggas was trying to make it seem like, oh, this nigga had influence. Like, Jay never had that type of influence. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's a boss, don't get it wrong. Like, we respect him for what he did business-wise. But to say, like, he had, like, in the culture, everybody wanted to be a Jay-Z, that's cap. Because dudes was still rocking jerseys. Everybody wasn't rocking the button-up shirts. Yeah, dudes rocked it, but they wasn't rocking button-ups because of Jay. It was other rappers wearing button-up shirts before Jay-Z. So that's when I don't understand when dudes be saying that, yo, like, niggas, everybody was rocking, doing what Jay said on Change Clothes. It was a select few of niggas that was doing that. Everybody wasn't doing that. But it is what it is. Now, back to what I was saying. So, Jay had the issue with the Harlem dudes. Vacant Lot. He blackballed Vacant Lot. Let's just keep it real. A lot of Harlem rappers, when the beef started, he blackballed a lot of them Harlem dudes. Straight up and down. I don't care what nobody say. A lot of the Vacant Lot dudes that was affiliated with Vacant Lot, Jay made sure them dudes got blackballed. Right? And y'all could go back and listen to the Face Off mixtape with Alpo and AZ. You hear Pat Porter on there. You hear Velma Porter on there. You hear what they saying on the tape. You know what I'm saying? Everything they saying on that tape wasn't no lie. Like, dude was running around trying to be, rich. He was trying to be rich. He was trying to be Poe. You know what I'm saying? He was talking Poe. If you listen to all his music, he talking Poe lifestyle. All is one, Lotto. He keep talking about Lotto. Every record you hearing him talking about Lotto, talking about, the McDonald's. You talking about what Rich and Poe did. His whole career, you hear him talking about the McDonald's. You hear him talking about Lotto. You hear him talking about certain things. Talking about Broadway and all that. Shout out to my Dominicanos up on there on Broadway. Like, he talking about things that Rich and Poe was doing. You know what I'm saying? And talking about the twin brother, Rich Porter. Like, come on, bro. The young Rich Porter, the way I flip quarters. Like, he was so... And this is why the Brooklyn niggas was mad with him. Like the Jimmy Henchmans and all these Brooklyn dudes, especially Jimmy Henchman, he voiced it. He didn't understand why Jay was jacking Poe and the whole paid in full thing so much. You know what I'm saying? And he had did a video where he spoke about Jay jacking, Harlem dudes and jacking AZ and Al Poe and them doing the paid in full movie, so they felt some type of way because he's a Brooklyn dude from Marcy. He didn't jack no Brooklyn legends. And the reason why Jay loved that Harlem swag, he loved that Harlem style. You gotta look. He dated chicks that Rich and Poe was messing with. You feel me? He was dealing with uptown Harlem chicks, Bronx chicks that had a history with Rich and Poe. So he really was trying to copy the Rich and Poe lifestyle all through, like I said, from I would tell y'all from 90 when he started hanging out with Dame, from, I would say in my opinion, from like, cause he carved himself, I would say like from 95 to all the way to 2000, he was following the Rich Porter Al Poe blueprint. Straight under Dam. He going to the Diamond District. He going to Tito. Tito, Rich and Poe was going to Tito in the 80s. Chris Style, Rich Porter, he doing that 88. You know what I'm saying? 87, 86, they doing Chris Style, Rich Porter and Al Poe. He popping Chris Style. You know what I'm saying? So it was always, he always wanted to be Harlem. And then when Mino and HUD and all them, Mason, everybody, even Cam was calling him out how he wanted to be Harlem. They all called him out on that. That's what all the Harlem dudes was calling him out, because he really wanted to be Harlem. He really wanted to be Harlem. You know what I'm saying? He was always chilling in Harlem. He was always in the spots uptown. He was always, around a lot of uptown dudes, Bronx dudes, Harlem dudes. This is who Jay-Z's around. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when people was like, when I hear people talking about how he influenced, he didn't set any trends. His trends came from following behind a lot of Harlem dudes that really put him in the swag and really the trend-setting position. Real trends in the game, Jay would have not been following around all the Harlem cats. He would have not been following around Dame. He would not have been following around Biggs. Biggs put him on the iceberg. He started rocking iceberg when he was around Biggs. You know what I'm saying? You heard what Gene said. He had the cream. The cream joint. He ain't even had the real Versace on. So, you know what I'm saying? The reason why Dame hooked up with him because he was wearing Nike Airs. And Harlem dudes, that's what they rock. They rock Nike Airs. So he wearing Nike Airs. He ain't like they say, he didn't dress like a Brooklyn dude. He ain't seen him wearing felines. He was wearing Nike Airs. So he dressing like an uptown dude. You know what I'm saying? He emulating uptown dudes. And that's what he did. He emulated a lot of uptown Harlem dudes. And then when he got around the like I said, when he got around the Philly cats, he started emulating them. So like around like late 2000, 2001, you seen him dressing like the Philly cats. He wearing the throwback jerseys. He wearing the bandanas like the Philly dudes. Beans, bandana king. He wearing a bandana like Beans. You know what I'm saying? He dressing like how Beanie Siegel dressing. You know what I'm saying? Just like how the whole the in the projects with the jerseys on and all that. Like Mobb Deep said, we was doing the jerseys and the Henny and all that in the projects. You doing the Henny and all that, the cups and all that, cause you watching you swagger jacket. So when the Harlem dudes is like, yo, you swagger jacket, you want to be RP. You know what I'm saying? Cause the picture where you see Jay in front of the whip, that's a Harlem niggas know that's a Rich Porter look. You know what I'm saying? You look at volume 1, look at volume 2 and volume 1. He in front of whips. He doing the whole Rich Porter, Alpo look. You know what I'm saying? And he really was copying the whole swag of Harlem aesthetic. See, his whole gimmick was a Harlem aesthetic. Just the way he talked, the way he was talking like he was from Harlem. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? The way he was talking about the brick game, he wasn't talking like how a Brooklyn rapper talk. Because Brooklyn rappers, besides AZ and Biggie, there was not that many Brooklyn rappers talking that street talk like that. Like, I'm talking like on a hustling level. A lot of them was on a stick up. They was on that type of level. Bang them up, bang, bang, shoot your gun and all that. You know what I'm saying? That's what they was really on. They was on that bust your gun, robbery type music. You know what I'm saying? And AZ, because I'm going to keep it real, AZ, really, in my opinion, Jay copied, like, early. If you want to say, like, 9-6, he copied, like, 9-5, 9-6. I really believe that he copied a lot of AZ swag. You know what I'm saying? Raekwon, Ghostface. He was copying them. You know what I'm saying? Because AZ was one of them dudes that was uptown. AZ was really uptown, but AZ didn't do how AZ had his own swag. Even though he was talking about the uptown lifestyle, Sugar Hill and all that, but AZ had his own swag. You know what I'm saying? AZ was smooth. You know he was out there doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? Raekwon, Ghost, they had their own swag. Even though they had a Harlem swag, they had that Harlem swag to them. But they had their own swag. They had a mixture of Harlem. You know what I'm saying? A mixture of, how, the Yardie cats was rocking the silk shirts and the Clarks and all that. But they had that uptown swag too. Just what they was talking about, the Chris style and all that. And you already know they was like you heard them. They was coming uptown. They was coming uptown to Harlem. You know what I'm saying? They was tight with all that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people say, Ghostface had a lot of Pretty Tone Capone influences. But like when you really look at Face and all them, and you look at Raekwon and AZ, they had their own swag. And you gotta respect it. You know what I'm saying? Like, Raekwon had his own. Hold on one second. So yeah, Ghostface had his own swag, and AZ had his own swag. Ghostface came in the game with the robes. You know what I'm saying? And the whole Tony Stark thing. You know what I'm saying? Now, like I said, when it come to Jay-Z now, Jay didn't really have, like I tell people, Jay didn't really have a swag. He ain't really, like when niggas be saying, yo, Jay influence, I be like, yo, what he influence? Cause, the earlier his career, the beginning of Rockefeller, till, like I said, it came with all the Philly dudes. When we go back to like 96, when the first albums dropped, to 2000, early to mid 2000s, he was trying to beat Harlem. And then when, the Philly boys came from 2000 to 2001 to 2002, he was trying to beat the Philly dudes. He wearing the jerseys like them. He talking like them. You hearing him talking about bull and all type of different swags. Like, he was just the swag away the Philly dudes was rapping. He was copying him. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I always give it up to Nelly, because Nelly tell you, like, Harlem put him up on game. Just like Philly put Nelly up on game. And he give his credit. He was out there with Ram Squad, Nelly. You know what I'm saying? So he was soaking up the game. Tommy Hill is in his first video, the Country Grammar joint. You know what I'm saying? And the Harlem dude. So Nelly always give it up to Philly. He always give it up to Harlem. But when it come to Jay, he never gave it up to Philly. And he never gave it up to Harlem. Because without Philly and Harlem, Jay wouldn't have an identity, bro. They gave Jay-Z an identity. Harlem gave him an identity, that whole hustler identity. Like, because his whole synopsis and play by play was of a uptown hustler. You know what I'm saying? If you didn't know Jay was from Marcy, you would think he was from Harlem. You know what I'm saying? Just because he shot the videos in Marcy, he did more uptown talking, the way he was dressing. Like, A Solo boots was a Harlem thing. Brooklyn niggas didn't wear A Solo. It's like A Solos, Vasquez's, those type of Ava Rexes. Like, this was uptown, bro. That was uptown all day. You know what I'm saying? North Faces, you know what I'm saying? Like, the way Jay was dressing, that wasn't a Brooklyn aesthetic. That wasn't what Brooklyn dudes dressed. They didn't dress like how Jay was dressing. He know that. You know what I'm saying? He know that. You know what I'm saying? He was dressing like he was from uptown because he was around a lot of uptown dudes. And they put him on to the fashions. Biggs was putting him on to the fashion. He around Bobby Love. He around Dame. He around these dudes. You know what I'm saying? They uptown dudes. They got the uptown nigga swagger. So, by him being around these dudes, like I said, bro, he hearing the stories. He hearing the stories. That's why, if you really look, man, he really wanted to be rich. He really wanted to be Poe. He really wanted to be these dudes. You know what I'm saying? That's why, every record that he did, he basically was based on their life. You know what I'm saying? The songs. You know what I'm saying? Juan, you got to remember, Juan was rich in Poe's means. You know what I'm saying? He got history with these dudes. You know what I'm saying? Jay met Juan through Biggs. He didn't know Juan like that. When Jay was hustling, he wasn't copping from Juan. He was copping from Spivey. Everybody know that. That's who Jay really was copping from. But he make y'all thinking like Lordo. He keep talking about Lordo. Bro, he was copping from Spivey. And how he got that was who DeHaven was rocking with. You know what I'm saying? He was coming up there with DeHaven uptown. That's why he said uptown hot block. He got his side sprayed up. You know what I'm saying? He talking DeHaven life. You gotta remember, the first album was DeHaven's life. The second album is he wanted to be on some Bad Boy Puffy shit. Then the third album, he on this Harlem, uptown, Rich Porter, Al Poe lifestyle. If you really listen to, the Dope Man joint, and you listen to Volume 2, and you listen to Volume 3, he really based his whole lifestyle around those stories from the 80s, them uptown Harlem stories. Now, look, Brooklyn got legends. Brooklyn got Lou Hobbs. Brooklyn got J.R. Hamilton. Brooklyn got Demencio. They got Webb. Webb, he talk about Danny Dan. Webb and Danny Dan was partners. And Bush and all that. That's in his neck of the woods. Bush, Danny Dan, Lance, you know, you know, and Webb. That's in his neck of the woods, and Demencio and Lou Hobbs and Ken Do and all that. That's his neck of the woods in Brooklyn. But he not rapping about the Brooklyn niggas. He rapping about the 80s Harlem legends. Like I said, Rich and Poe. You know what I'm saying? That's what he rapping about. He hanging around uptown dudes. He hanging around Harlem dudes. He hanging around Bronx dudes. You know, he hanging around these type of dudes. He's hanging around Bronx and Harlem dudes. You know what I'm saying? He's not hanging around, you know, the dudes that's, you know, from Brooklyn, because he had the issues with the Brooklyn dudes. Let's just keep it real. You know, that's why when you listen to Jimmy, when he talking, he like, yo, he ain't talk about, you know, Demencio. You know what I'm saying? Because Jimmy issues where he ain't make a movie about Demencio from Brooklyn. That's what the Brooklyn niggas felt like. Oh, you ain't make a movie about Demencio, but you and your partners, they doing videos about Poe and Rich and AZ about Demencio, because he from Brooklyn. But he wasn't, how you say, you know, he wasn't mesmerized by the Brooklyn Cats. You know, he was mesmerized by Harlem hustlers. And if you really look at his whole portfolio, he basically, that's why you never seen her put on any dudes from BK. Big put on everybody from BK. Like everybody you name, he put on Don Pooh. He brought Don Pooh in the game. You know what I'm saying? He brought Lance Unrivera in the game, right? These are dudes from Brooklyn. Jay know these dudes, cause his circle dudes like Calvin Klein, these dudes that Klein and you know, people that Jay knew was around. Big put these niggas in the game. You know, Jacob York, he know York. He know Jacob York. Jacob York was in the Originators video with him and Jazz O. But Jay ain't bring these niggas in the game. Big did. You know, so Big was on some, we gonna put all the Brooklyn dudes on. That's why I be laughing when dudes be like, yo, Jay Brooklyn, and they be Brooklyn. I'll be like, yo, how y'all Brooklyn bias when the nigga ain't never, in his raps, none of his raps, he never emulated a Brooklyn dude, ever. He emulated Harlem dudes his whole career. He emulated Harlem to the fullest. He emulated Rich Boy. He emulated Al Poe. Like I told you, he's riding around in a car trying to be like Poe. That's why when you hear Mino saying, yo, that's an RP look. You ain't RP. They tell him you not Rich Porter, because they know he trying to be Rich Porter. And everybody knew that. You know what I'm saying? But he, you know, he'll make it seem like he wasn't, but he really was, man. He was copying the Harlem aesthetics, man. You know, Jay-Z wanted to be a Harlem dude. He hated on Harlem dudes. He did all his power to blackball Harlem dudes and other things, but he wanted to be a Harlem dude. You know what I'm saying? He stopped rapping fast, started copying Big L flow. Let's keep it real. He copying Big L. He copying, you know, Nas. You know, he taking some of May's shit. You know, he was copy the Philly dudes. Like, he really wanted to be these dudes. You know what I'm saying? To the point, like, you can't even say he didn't want to be these dudes, because he did. He wanted to be uptown so bad, and everybody know it. Everybody know it. You know what I'm saying? Everybody know it. Like, some dudes could be in denial and don't want to say it, but come on, bro. We can't be in denial on that. Son wanted to be Harlem. He could say, you know, people that's his stands, they could say whatever they want, but nigga ain't never had no influence. And I remember, he didn't have no influence. DMX and them had influence. DMX had influence. You know what I'm saying? 50 had influence. You know, Mace had influence. Puff and Bad Boy had influence. Big had influence. Tupac had influence. Jay didn't have influence. Jay just swagger jack. So it is what it is. You know, and it's sad though, you know, but it is what it is, man. It's your boy Bullets Gotti. You know, we gotta speak the facts. Facts is the facts. Fiction is fiction. Is what it is. Salute.